Here we are.
What is up, guys? We're back, and today I have a very special guest, Joey. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. I'm
My
honoured.
pleasure.
I'm honoured to be part of your project. Big time.
My pleasure. And today we are going to be talking about your meditation retreat. You went on a 10-day silent, no talking, no doing anything, just sitting down, focusing on your breath. Okay, how was that? Like, why did you decide to do this?
Oh, that's well, an interesting story. Why I did this was because of a close friend of mine, really. Well, many people, I've travelled a lot. I travelled a lot through Asia, and I spent a year specifically living in India, in Rishikesh, in 2018, the birthplace of yoga. And it was that year, I ran a hostel out there, and I'm a very social guy, so I met a lot of people around the way, and of course I'm running a hostel, so it's a very social situation, and a lot of people come and go through there, and they start talking about yoga and meditation techniques, breathing techniques, all this, and a lot of people would drop the it come up often in conversation, the word vipassana. Have you done Vipassana? Oh my God, I did this Vipassana course and what's this Vipassana thing, And anyway, towards the end of this year, a very close friend of mine, bless him, he recommended to me, he just completed one here in New Zealand. I was at the end of my time there in India and about to arrive here in New Zealand. And he was more towards the end of his time here in New Zealand and kind of looking for his next steps. And he's an English guy as well. Shout out to Lucas. And he'd just come out of a Vipassana retreat here. And so he brings up this word to me, Vipassana. Bro, I just done this Vipassana retreat, 10 days, silent meditation, no speaking, no looking at anyone, as per your intro. And I'm like, oh yeah, and I'd been having my own little sort of, I don't know if you want to call them like awakening moments, or the little epiphanies, the little realizations or evolutions of mind there in Rishikesh as I was studying yoga. And I'd never learned any yoga before that. And I started studying yoga a few times a week. I weren't hard out, but I'd go a few times a week every week, and seeing some real deep benefits from this myself. But so there's my mate. We've been trying to get hold of each other for good part of like 3 months, and it's never with intensity. It's always, I missed you, I'll get you again this weekend, bish bosh, never getting hold of each other. We finally get hold of each other as we are now, Dylan, having a call like this. And I'm telling him all about yoga, and he's telling me all about, I've just had this experience in Vipassana, and I could feel in him a clarity, there was like a real, like he'd hit upon something. And he had a dichotomy of mind where he said, just as much as I feel all of what I feel, is like I see through it, like I see through everything now. I have such an insight. He says, but what am I to do now? He's like, what am I to do? Like, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like trying to lighten the mood. What do you mean? What you're gonna? Well, like I see through all of reality, but what am I going to do? Like, my visa's almost expired. I'm going to go back to the UK and work in a call centre. And bless his heart, it wasn't long after this call, less than a month, 3 weeks, he passed away. A bit of a freak accident here in New Zealand. I don't know the exact details. And yeah, he passed away. But the last part of this conversation was where, we were talking about it intensely, and he said 2 things. He said, you already kind of have the right mind for it. he says, but I think you should do it. You should go and do it. And so, like I say, prior to that, all this always coming up in conversation in my travels, and then he tells me to do it, and he's gone. So for me, it was a way to honour his memory. And I never done anything like it before. I of course, yoga, like I say, I was studying yoga itself, the physical activity of yoga. And as I'm sure you know, that is in its own right a form of meditation. So I've been within those realms of meditation, of breathing, focusing on the breath, connecting with the breath. And I first encountered meditation in any form a few years earlier to that, again through traveling. I was in Laos, and one of these Buddhist monks that I got friendly with, same age as me, he used to ask me all the time about the material world, and the material things, and what's it like to have a girlfriend, like, have you ever had a girlfriend? What's that like? There's me asking him, what's it like to sit and meditate, man? What's all that about? And so he gave me a little like 10, 15 minutes intro, just focusing on your breath, following your breath. So these are my only two experiences of coming close to these realms. And so fast forward, I've left India and I've come to New Zealand. And like I say, my friend, that took a little while for me to really accept the madness of that. I mean, I was coming here to meet him. And but once I calmed myself and accepted that, I thought, what, I'm going to honour his memory by taking up his final suggestion to me, which was to go to Vipassana. And so I went there with no real training, nothing, just like I say, the understanding of yoga and the understanding of somewhat self-discipline. And I just went into the Vipassana experience just cold, jump in the deep end.
Did you have any expectations before going in? Did you have any expectations of what you thought it was going to be like?
I tried to have none in most everything I do, but as the thinking mind, we do it. So I had the preconceived notions, probably like many people before me, that it was going to be somewhat like this blissful experience of like a calm retreat of like, hanging out and eating nice food and, something quite blissful, I think, something quite a cliche of a retreat, like any kind of retreat or spa or, and it was not. That was not the case at all. That was not the case. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. And so when you went to this retreat, what did you do on sort of your first few days?
So I guess I should explain like the general setup is, as you mentioned, 10 days. It's a 10-day course. I forget the exact name of the place now, but it's close to Auckland. It's about an hour or an hour and a half north of Auckland. And it's a bit in the bush out the way. So you're isolated, and it's a 10-day course, and it's they tell you, they give you so you said about expectations. They make sure as a program that you understand what you're getting into somewhat. So they send you the schedule, which is, sort of 6:30 a.m. start, first hour meditation, followed by breakfast, followed by another hour meditation, then a break, then an hour meditation, then free time, then lunch, then an hour meditation, then a break, then an hour meditation, then free time, then dinner, and then another hour meditation, then a break, then a discourse. Now that might not be exact, but that's sorry.
You said break. What do you get to do in your breaks if all you can do is meditate?
Yeah, not much, and you find that you do more of the same because you're just so much in this repetitive. Yeah. So like I say, the center is out in the bush, and it's a very simple place. It's there's a central building. There's kind of three buildings. There's a central building, and either side of it is a male, like the male accommodation, and then the other side is the female accommodation. And so they divide the grounds up while the course is on into male and female to attempt to eliminate distractions. So the males go one side, the females go another side, and you don't meet. You meet in the central meditation hall where you sit either side as well. That's the only time you're in the same room. So for the rest of the 10 days, you're completely separate. And in the central area, there's the meditation hall and the lunch hall, and then the bathrooms, showers, toilets. And so you do the meditation in the group setting in the hall, and some of them are interchangeable. Like you don't have to go to the group hall; you can meditate alone in your room. And so that is the whole campus in its entirety. And there's a tiny bit of a forestry walk, but it's literally like you can walk around it in 3 minutes. It's just a little loop track into the trees. And then there's a huge span of grass outside the accommodation block, and then trees fencing you in, basically. So, in answer to your question, when you have free time, there is not a whole lot to do. And as part of the course information they provide, they encourage you to limit your exercise, limit your activity. This is all within the course structure they provide. They ask you no running, no jogging, no exercise, no dancing, no singing, obviously not to vocalize anything.
Sounds like a total prison. Why would you go? 10 days, no talking, no dancing. Just a little bit of food in the morning and maybe at lunch or at dinner as well. And that's it.
Yeah. I'm glad it came out of your mouth, brother, because I didn't want to project it like that. But it was when you asked at the beginning, that was the first word that came to my mind. Essentially, it is like a prison. It is like a prison. And therefore, the expectation, like I say, that it was going to be this blissful retreat-like experience was absolutely opposite to the real reality. The real reality being you're enclosed in a space, you're cut off from communicating with others, you're not allowed to express yourself as you previously might have, be it through dancing or singing or running around or even doing yoga. The only thing that they understand and sort of allow is that you do light exercise, like by walking around the campus and doing some stretching, but generally and so it sounds really insane, but the core principle that they're trying to get you to focus on is how much the mind goes to these other places. Like I say, even me suggesting, you're not allowed to, Dylan, you're not allowed to sing, you're not allowed to dance. You might go, I don't sing and dance, that ain't my vibe. But you don't realize until you remove these things one by one, you don't realize how much the thinking mind, the wandering mind, does do these things, very unconsciously. Like as you're working, or as you're, just doing your chores around the house, maybe you just start singing some song that's in your head, but you don't think too much about it. And when you start to remove these little elements one by one, these habits, because that's what it is, like these mind habits, you begin to see that actually so much of our activity as a human is almost as pre-programmed, like just what do they call it, like when a plane flies, autopilot.
Right.
We kind of run on this autopilot, and so you start to, what I found very quickly in those first few days, which is a question of yours a little while ago, was that it's hard. It's like this shock to the system to suddenly completely change your behavior, your behavioral setting. So therefore you completely, it's like you're putting on display for your own, if you're looking at yourself consciously, you're putting on display your own habits, the thinking mind like that. And you start to see it become manifest so easily. I'm walking along, I'm walking to the meditation room, and I start singing, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, and you come back again to like, no, you're just here. And so one of the core principles of the Vipassana system, maybe I should explain Vipassana itself a little bit as the philosophy behind it. Vipassana as a word translates, I think, to insight. I'm pretty sure it almost directly translates to insight. Might be wrong about that. And the insight being, like I say, the thinking mind. So what they claim, what Goenka is the teacher. He's not alive anymore, but the discourses you watch during this course are from interviews with him in the late 90s before he passed away. So Goenka, the way he explains it is that this is the most kind of authentic approach to what Buddha, or our understanding of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, who lived 2,500 years ago, that most of us identify as Buddha. It is the most authentic meditation method as passed down from teacher to student, teacher to student, teacher to student, going right back to Buddha. So therefore, in effect, what he was suggesting is that this method, is what Buddha himself hit upon in his journey, and it's what he's come to realize. So the Vipassana translated is insight, and it's very simple to describe actually, and it is purely to sit with, as they keep saying, one of the core tenets, to sit with the reality as it is, not as you'd like it to be. The reality as it is, not as you'd like it to be. And it's a very important distinction, because as a human, the thinking mind, what we attempt to do quite often is enforce our own distinct perspective on what reality should be like. As in, I'll give an example. You have a situation where you're upset about something, somebody wrongs you in some way out in the street, and you carry on with your day for a little while, but with an attachment to the idea that was out of place. How did they wrong? How dare they wrong me? That they shouldn't wrong me. They should have been like this and that to me, or perhaps I should have responded like this and that.
Yeah.
And this should that we get caught in, it's very human, but this should that we get caught in then defines the narrative of the situation that, for one, happened, and then secondly, that we're in now. So what we, what I and I'm a vibe with this. What I believe is we get caught in that narrative moving forward, and the attachment, as Buddha would describe, to what should be. It should be like this. And so the Vipassana system is a way through physical practice to come back to what is, not what should be, to come back to what is, to identify what is, how it is, and be with that. Whether good or bad is irrelevant. They're two ends of the same problem, but they're irrelevant. Just what is essential.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we put so many we create mental models for everything in our lives, and they serve us in a particular context, right? Like you are trying to, or whatever it could be, it serves us, but then we forget that this mental model is not reality. It is something that is constructed in our minds.
Yeah.
And so, for example, just a really simple one, a mental model of, hey, I need to work really hard and push myself and grind, things like that,
Yeah.
which is really common. And you think, oh, it's a healthy model, but it's actually limiting them too, because they don't see that as just a model, and that becomes their reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And like I say, and obviously I'm speaking largely from my place, but I have these conversations with my friends, and a lot of people identify to it. But that should, it constantly comes to me, that should, and not just in, like, as the example I gave, but like as you're just saying, I have a very particular sort of complex with productivity, actually. And I would say I have my dad to thank for that. Thank you, Dad. And for good reason now. That he too, I see in him, he has a fixation on his work. He's a very old school worker mentality. So he does a lot of labouring. And so in his labour, that's really where he finds himself, in his labour. And if that labour doesn't exist, it can take him out of himself a bit, and find that he can find it difficult to navigate that space without that labour. And so I kind of have this same mentality of, like, needing to do things, needing to be productive. And when I find myself in a space of kind of a chill zone, it's a bit uncomfortable for me. I find myself a bit like, I'm not really up to that much. Like, maybe I should go do something. Like, I should, and then I start this loop of self, sort of attacking myself, through not doing enough. Oh, you're not doing enough. You should go be more productive.
Yeah, it's like you have to hit certain metrics or do certain things to feel value as a person. Yeah. Otherwise, you don't feel like you are good enough.
Yeah.
It's like you're deriving it off, oh, I did this, I did that. Oh, I have a girlfriend. Oh, I went here, I traveled, I went to this school, I went to this university. But perhaps what if you didn't have any of those things? How would you feel? Would you still feel the same way?
Yes, exactly, brother. And I'm glad you said that. So the Vipassana system itself, that's why, as we're laughing about it being like a prison, that's why. It's to remove all of the ability for us to cling to an outside and often material pacifier, really, of the mind. And when you start to unplug one by one from all of this sensory experiences that we run to, and sort of run between, going from one to the other like this, when you unplug from those, what is left? And therefore, to go even deeper, which you don't necessarily do on the 10 days, but to go deeper into this realm, therefore, what is I? Because when you unplug from the attachment to all of the sensory pleasures or sensory experiences, because they're not all, even the unpleasurable ones, they create our sense of self. So what is left? And so in the Vipassana, in the 10 days system, you get a chance to learn how to unplug from that somewhat, and how to utilize a space that can provide that experience, really, can provide the basis for you to begin to understand that. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Was it indoors the whole time, or was it indoor and outdoor? You could meditate in both areas. Because I had a friend that went recently, and he said it was just all indoors, which surprised me, because I was like, oh, that seems kind of a bit of a disappointment. If you can just do it indoors, it's not much of a retreat, right?
Yeah.
What was your experience?
Yeah. So it is, or they actually touch upon this within the discourses in the evenings, and Goenka himself suggests that you don't go outside. He says, at least not for now. He says, in the future, if you continue this practice and become quite, skillful with it, yeah, you go do it outside. He said, but for now, just learn it inside. And the reason being very simply, that the technique that you learn. So the technique that you learn begins with you asked about the 3 days. It begins with the first 3 days focusing on the breath. You focus on the breath around the nasal area. You look for the sensation of the breath around the nasal area itself, the airflow in and out of the nose. So you keep your mouth closed, which is hard for me, and you observe the breath around the nose. And once you begin after 3 days to train to focus because your mind's just going everywhere. It's everywhere, especially when you just entered. So you begin to train just to feel the breath. Once you feel the breath there, the technique pushes on on day 4, 5, 6. You start to learn how to observe that same way that you hone your attention there. You hone your attention in other parts of your body. And so actually constantly, even now as I'm sitting here, there's a infinite amount of sensations I'm experiencing. I'm under this plastic roof. It's quite sunny here. So I'm feeling heat actually on my forehead. Yeah, I'm feeling pressure by sitting on the chair. There's a resistance between my skin and the chair. I can feel the shirt again through heat. My shirt becoming sticky. Yeah, on my back. And there are little flies landing on me, and then a surface below that, there's just little things happening all the time in your body, you know. So you're feeling sensations continuously, but we're not so sensitive an instrument to detect them, you know. So you can't just, you know, attach to them constantly, you know. Here I am talking to you, so all of those sensations are relevant, but they're happening. So this is why they advise you to do it inside, because the conditions that they set up, especially in the meditation hall, where they, in this particular setting, because I know if you do it in India, say, it's very different, and every centre is different. But here they use some kind of air filters to make the air in the meditation hall not necessarily pleasurable, but, you know, just right. Like, so on the hot days, they're extracting a lot of the heat, not to make it cold, because then you're going to be cold, you see, just to come back to that middle, because the whole system's always about coming back to that equanimity, they call it, to be equanimous, to be always in the middle. And so they advise that you stay within the meditation hall, or if you're meditating outside, within your room, because you go and meditate out in the open air, then you have the breeze of the air on your face. You know, you hear the birds chirping or whatever it is. You know, you have some little flies landing on you, have ants crawling up your legs, whatever it is. It's not to say you can't, but it's to say that it's a harder path to begin with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How much of your time was thinking and how much was meditating? And then did you have any thoughts, or did you go down any rabbit holes that really surprised you or took you a while to really realize, and you just jumped up and you, whoa, what happened there? I spent, you know, an hour or 2 hours or however long just going down some rabbit hole. Did you experience anything like that?
Yeah, constantly. And that's such an interesting question, and almost philosophical in the nature of meditation itself. What is meditation itself? Yeah, I constantly went down. I mean, like I've already referenced the idea of singing. Now, for me, and I would never even necessarily have stated that I have such a focus on songs, but the amount of songs that came up in my mind during this time is unreal, and the amount that I cycled through. So as I'm sitting there in an hour meditation session, I might go through about 15 songs, you know, coming out of all
album.
Yeah, and completely disconnected. Like a song will come, like I would be singing The Clash in my mind or something, you know, The Clash, London Calling. Then I'm like, get out of here, back to meditation, back to the breath, okay, back to looking for that sensation. Then maybe just randomly comes in some pop song from the 90s, you know. And what are you doing in here? Get out, you know. So yeah, I was constantly in and out of thought, and and going down some really deep rabbit holes. But again, that's why this particular system, it encourages you to, or teaches you to hone your sensitivity to your physical sensations. So, and I actually became fixated on that as a problem, Dylan. I kept asking, because there are teachers there, and you can book in sessions with the teachers twice a day to sit and ask them any problems you have or anything like that. And I, for the first few days, that was one thing I kept going back to them with, was like, like, what about thinking? Because all they say is don't attach to any of it. Just keep coming back. Forget about it. Wherever it is you've gone, come back to the breath. Look for the sensation of the air. Again, the air coming in and out of your nostrils. So they're trying to make you a very sensitive instrument to the physical sensations of your body. Therefore, almost entirely not dealing with the concept of mind. Actually, for Vipassana, as I understood it almost really didn't really touch on the concept of mind much more. It's going into the physical realms, because in recognition of our material nature. So yeah, I was constantly a bit sort of hung up on that. But one thing, and I was a bit of a maverick on this course, in the way that I would bring you're meant to abandon ideally they encourage you to abandon all your notions of anything before you go in there, which of course as a human being anyway is almost, if not impossible. So there is one thing I heard about meditation a long time ago. One small technique was how to work your way back. So when in the meditative state, if a thought arises, or if you find that you said that you've gone down a rabbit hole, say if you've gone down a rabbit hole, how, like, when did it begin? And so try and work out when it began, and step by step go back. Okay, why I'm thinking of some memory of my mum years ago. What came before that? Oh, before that was, I got onto that because I was thinking of my brother. Okay, then what about? And you go back step by step, and oftentimes you can't really find the beginning actually, and so you kind of have to abandon it. But hopefully, and for me, I would use that in a liberating way. I'd kind of like laugh, I'm sure many times I'm sitting there just smiling as I'm realizing, forget about it, you ain't going to find it. And it brings me back to the now. It's to keep coming back to the now, back to here I am, here and now, in the meditation hall in New Zealand, in Vipassana, concentrating on my breath. And I go, okay, I'm here, I'm with my breath, there's my breath, there it is. I wonder what they're cooking for dinner later. Oh, I'd love it if they made, and there you go again, and constantly. But one of the things that they try and get across to you is, and don't get me wrong, many of the implications, even the setup that I'm describing, being like prison, the fact that you get given the schedule so regimented, and they keep reminding you, even when you arrive on day one, you have to again read through the schedule and then sign it to say that you've reread it and that you understand that you're on this intense schedule, that you can leave if you want, but they strongly advise you don't leave, because it could create sort of ripples through the other students. If they're having anything going on in their mind, and someone leaves, it could trash it for everyone, kind of thing. So there are many serious implications that are thrown into your face, like many serious sort of like flags put up. But really underneath it, they're trying to give you a kind of a non-serious mind about all these things like we're discussing. So one thing Goenka keeps saying is smilingly. He says smilingly, come back to your breath smilingly, like as in, don't
kindly,
don't punish yourself, don't get angry, don't be upset, just smile and think, oh, wow, I did it
I think
again.
that's so powerful. That's so important, eh? Because
Yeah,
often we judge ourselves in tasks and we think we're not doing it right. We need to do it perfectly. We need to do it in a particular way. But sort of with meditation and even with life, you're only going to do what your brain gets you to do, right?
yeah,
It's just a pattern.
yeah,
So if you let go of that judgment, then you're going to start doing the right thing eventually anyway. And it may take time. It may not be how you see it. It may not be reality.
yeah,
But that in itself is just a model you made, which trying to push you down and say, hey, you need to be successful. You need to get this just really quickly. And
yeah,
that's the whole purpose of, what you were saying.
yeah, for sure. And, I would say that, and perhaps this is like an old person's thing to say almost, you find yourself using this type of language, but I think these days, with social media and our kind of, I would describe the culture that we live in as being like hyper culture. That's the way I see it. Everything is very fast and instantaneous and instant gratification, and a lot of the apps and stuff that have been developed, even if you now want to be an app developer, you understand the concept of that instant gratification. How do I, as they call it, the attention economy. How do I tap into that? How do I get someone to stay on my app longer? If they press a button, how are they rewarded? And therefore, it's a cool app to use. Well, I think that we're really in this state of hyperculture, like saying it's all very fast and fast paced, and we want instant results. So no wonder that we find this type of thing quite difficult, and no wonder this type of thing is connected to a very old history.
For sure. I kind of wonder if 2,000 years ago, people would have found meditation a lot easier, or at least it'd be natural. I mean, I don't know. Maybe your thoughts on this, but if you were a builder, or you were, a forestman or a hunter or fisher, you're spending all day doing one very sort of repetitive task day in and day out.
Yeah.
And I suppose their mind might be quieter, but in the same way, they might not like that quiet. They might be starting to play games in their own heads. It just might be a different form. What do you think?
Oh, well, that's such an interesting conversation to bring up. Yeah, and it reminds me of, I had a similar conversation with a friend of mine who he comes more from the Zen aspect of things. He's really into Zen. So he asked me this example of, like, he sort of went, oh man, sometimes I kind of fantasize about, like being like a farmer in ancient Japan. Do you know what I mean? Just like working on a rice field in ancient Japan. I imagine it's just be so easy, man. Like so much clarity of mind.
Yeah.
And I see how beautiful the image is. But yeah, I think that still we're human. And I think that that rice farmer in our depiction, yeah, definitely there's going to be a rice farmer who's quite clear and still and doing his role, wakes up in the morning, does his role, doesn't think too much about anything. But at the simultaneously, there will be a rice farmer who goes, oh, I don't know, like I'm meant to be a rice farmer like my dad. And I don't know, like there's a bigger country out there. Maybe there's a bigger world. Maybe it's go.
So much discontentment, eh?
Yeah.
No matter where you are, you'll be discontent in a way.
Yeah.
And you might be thinking, or I don't know how much idle drama there would be in sort of as a rice farmer in the village, but oh, what did she say? What did he say?
Yeah.
All about the community, all about
there you go.
Emotions and getting caught up in little dramas that don't really matter. But we've got them now, but we've got way more. Now we can feed off people on social media. We can feed off Will Smith's slap and have a good kick out of that. But back in the past, it would be everybody's dramas that you would know. So maybe you'd be even more attached to it, eh?
Yeah, well, exactly. I think that the difference is the scale by which we can connect to a sense of like otherness, like other humans doing other things, and again, the amount of that can arise. And so that same farmer, for instance, in this little fantasy image we have, that same rice farmer a young rice farmer could go on a trip, could go, nah, I'm not doing like my dad did. I'll go on a trip to the city. Then when he's in the city, you see, his consciousness starts to connect with a wider consciousness where, I mean, to me, that's what culture is. You know, it is many consciousnesses, many eyes that get together and think up new things. You know, it starts bubbling like a scientific petri dish. You know, it just expands and expands and expands. And so, if you're at all sort of searching for something else, and for instance, in this image, you go from the village to the city, then you connect with this wider I-ness, many different concepts being spoken about, and ideas and culture. So I think now, as you said, Will Smith, even the idea that for us to be able to discuss Will Smith, someone we don't know, someone in another country, someone in another position, someone who's lived many years of unknown, that are unknown to us. There's more unknown about Will Smith to us than is known, but we're able to connect somehow through using Will Smith, and that's what I see is it's not a problem, but just something that's new now with what we have to deal with is this huge consciousness of the internet, you know, and to connect to this huge global conversation that's constantly moving fast. Again, hyperculture, hyper speed. You know, at the click of a button, a tweet emerges that creates a conversation around a certain thing that has certain implications. That means these guys lose their job, which means this business goes bankrupt, which means this university are doing the wrong thing because they sided with the guy. That means da 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 da. And it's like, why? It's like so much I-ness that's flying around out there that we can connect to at any point. And and which then, to bring it all the way back into self, create some stresses and strains on our should, or our I-ness, you know, our should, you know, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that. A very small example is, like I say, when I was in India running the hostel and doing something really cool, you know, from England, I was in India. And this came from intentions I set up, you know, along the lines of kind of manifestation thinking. You know, I really dreamed up this scenario and found it very easily, found myself in it, found myself investing in a hostel. And I'm there, and I'm a year in India running my own place, doing all the branding as a graphic artist. I'm doing all the branding, all of the identity. I painted the whole side of the building as a wall mural, and when I entered, it wasn't doing well as a business. I think I was actually the first customer when I went there. I was the first customer in the place, actually. So I turned it into a business that, and I'm not going to say I turned this into I didn't turn it into a multi-million-dollar business. Nah, I just enabled it to stop losing money and start being on the even keel. And I had a lot of energy for that, a lot of pride for that. And a lot of people over from the UK saying, oh, man, it's crazy to watch what you're doing, you know, and they'd see on social media, wow, that's so amazing. And then there was their shoulds. I wish I was doing what you're doing. You're doing's amazing. You know what I found myself doing? I remember, this is just one example of many, but one morning I woke up, and this is something I specifically don't do anymore. I woke up, I picked up my phone, I looked at my phone, I'm on Instagram, and before even I'm thinking about anything, I'm thinking about other people's lives, yeah? And I look at some friend of mine from university, his Instagram post, him and his girlfriend spontaneously took a trip to Thailand, and it was like, yeah, we just spontaneously took a trip to Thailand, you know, because we could. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, I wish I was in Thailand. Like that's better than where I'm at. And I'm doing everything that I set out to do, and everything that people back in my home country are buzzing over.
Yeah.
So it's funny how easily we wander into those spaces, you know?
Absolutely. I think we often don't know what we want either, because we don't connect to ourselves. So I'm going to share a bit of a meditation exercise that I discovered from a YouTuber called Till Swan, actually. This is about connecting to yourself. So what you do is you look at yourself in the mirror, and you look in the pupils of your eyes, and you really just connect to yourself. Like, we spend so much time looking at other people on our phones, or maybe face to face. If I'm talking to you, I'm looking at you, so I know sort of how you're feeling. I see your face. I know the smile, the eyes, the emotions, what's going on in your life. I'm talking to you as well, but we don't really talk or look at ourselves for an extended period of time. So this exercise is meditation, where you are looking at the pupils of your eyes, and what will start to happen is you might start to see illusions. You'll start to see your face, or you might start to see your face warp. So you might say, hey, I'm not attractive. I don't look so good. I don't like how I look. And what you want to do here is you want to sit with it. You don't want to judge yourself. You just want to be, I'm there for you. I'm there for you, as if I'm there for another person. The same sort of energy. You want to, treat yourself kindly, as if you were helping somebody else. So I'm there for you. And what will start to happen is, your face might start to shift. You'll start to see different illusions, or different emotional illusions, or layers of ego will start to come up. And then perhaps you might look at yourself, and it could be like just a few minutes later, but that same thing which you thought was really ugly, you're now saying, hey, that's really attractive. Like, I like that. Which is interesting, because it really shows you how quickly we can see something based on these ego layers that we are constructing in our minds, not just looks, but all sorts of things. And so the technique is really about working on what you want, because when you are seeing yourself, you can be like, hey, I actually haven't followed through on a few things today. Like, I've been degrading my personal trust, because if you aren't following through, you said, hey, I'm going to do this, and then you didn't do it, yourself might actually feel a little hurt from that. But like, going, if we had a meeting and I flaked, I would feel, you would feel a little bad, sorry about that. But do you do that to yourself? Probably not, right? People don't say, oh, I'm sorry for doing that. I'm sorry. And so you really want to connect back to yourself and look at yourself.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That's a really interesting idea there. Do you know the name of the meditate? Does he give it a name?
Yeah, I think it's called the mirror exercise. So if you go on YouTube and you search up Teal Swan mirror exercise, she sort of has a 10-20 minute video where she's in front of a mirror and she's kind of narrating it and teaching you as she does it. So it was something I found was really cool, because I had done different styles of meditation, but I hadn't really fully connected to myself. Or you'd be surprised how little we look at ourselves, because we think we should look better. And so you look and, oh, my jawline's not good enough. It's sort of, oh, I'm this or that, or whatever it could be. You really do have a lot of judgments. And you only look at yourself, oh, I brushed my teeth, I do this. I look at myself in the mirror. No, you don't. It takes time. It's a practice as well.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that one.
Yeah. Well, funny you should say that. I was saying to someone the other day that I'm personally, myself, I'm overdue a haircut. And I hate going to the barber, and not for any particular reason, except I hate sitting in front of the mirror for that long, that length of time. It starts to trip me out. It's hard, and not that with the added layer of not all barber. I appreciate the barbers that don't really talk to you, to be honest. But if a barber such a, oh yes, oh where you from then? That's not a local accent. Oh yeah, what's your story? Da, da, da. When did you come here? Da, 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 da. And then you get into the level of almost psychoanalysis or self-psychoanalysis. I'm just looking at my mirror's image for 45 minutes or an hour, and also while it's morphing in front of you, because the image that I hold of myself with this hair, which I say is I need it cut. It's shifting as the process is going on, and I find it really difficult. So it's really interesting what you're saying, because how we identify with the self is everything, and quite often I mean, this is really where the trouble begins. Where the trouble begins and ends for us humans. You know, this I-ness, the how we identify with ourselves as this physical form so strongly. You know, and when I was in India, I met you meet. Have you been to India?
I've been twice, but I was quite young when I went, so
Oh
don't have
yeah.
a huge recollection. I wasn't
Oh
really a
brother.
tourist. I was just more for weddings.
Yeah, right.
But
Were you interested? Do you have it in you, an interest to go at this age and explore?
absolutely, I've been planning to go for a while. It's just been
Mm.
put off, and yeah, I definitely want to in the next few years. Maybe not to India, maybe more to Asia.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but
yeah,
definitely
brilliant.
want to go.
Yeah. So, do you recall that in India, there are many, you know, the idea of a holy man, you know, a Sidhu or a
A
Babaji, they call it
Brahmin or
Babaji. Yeah,
right.
the guys are wandering around, you know, everywhere. You know, there's a lot of, in fact, there's a lot of homeless people who wear the garb of a wandering ascetic, because
To get food and
yeah, it's
donations.
beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very accepted lifestyle to not participate in society that way. So there are a lot of them around. So, but I remember one time I was speaking to, you know, I finished yoga, and after yoga I walked down to the Ganges, and you know, just trying to get some distance actually, because I was in a real. Sometimes there was this one yoga instructor that, I don't know, on a good session in the afternoon, I'd be in some mad headspace, you know. So I didn't really want to interact afterwards. All the other students are like chatting at the door, putting their shoes on. And I'm like, no, I don't want to speak to anyone, at least for an hour, you know. I don't want to
Mhm.
come out of that resonance or something. So I went down to the river and sat down there. But of course, it's India, so I've run into, under a bridge next to the Ganges, I've run into a load of bloody holy men living there with their, you know, loincloths and got all their gear laid out and that. And I thought, oh no. Anyway, hopefully they won't speak to me. One of them comes up to me, starts speaking to me. His name was Hanuman Das, which means servant of Hanuman. And I said to him, you know, because they all the guys living down there had little, almost little shrines set up, little token images of Krishna or Vishnu or Shiva. They all had the different little icons. So I said, oh, well, what about you, Hanuman Das? You know, what's your image? You know, what do you worship to or make puja to? You know, the offering to. And he says, image? No, I don't do that. I was like, no, what do you do? He says, no, what I do, I have a mirror. And every time I want to do my puja, my offering and my devotion and my, you know, getting that way, he says, I take this mirror and I just clean it. I just start cleaning this mirror ever so carefully and just watching and cleaning this mirror. And of course, when you look at a mirror, you're looking at yourself. And he didn't speak English that great, so I couldn't have a podcast like this about it with him, you know, as to
Mm.
what the depth of that philosophy is. But I think the essence is really beautiful, you know, to just take some time to focus on this mirror, the cleanliness of this mirror, therefore the cleanliness of self, and the identification, probably for him, the identification of self, as you're describing, you know, if the version of you warps and moves, and you know, what is that saying about yourself? What is your connection or your attachment to self? Is this just images, you know? It's just
Mm.
images. And to go back to an earlier example that I said at the start of this conversation, if you've had a row with someone or something, um, and it's always images. You're attached to the image of the argument or the image of self, and the
Mm.
image of yourself has been tarnished in the face of the argument. And how do you move forward now into a new space where you're able to let go of either the attachment of the image of you in the argument, or the attachment of the image of them in the argument, you know, or the attachment of the image that you hold now post argument, and the same for them. So yeah, these images are really what we comprise our identity, ourself on. And Goenka, again, he gives a very similar example where he says, again, like an argument, you might have a fight with someone and you fall out of them. Maybe it's a close friend, but you fall out with them and you go, oh, you know, get out of my life. And you don't see each other for years and years and years. And so the situation's fine. You ain't got to think about it. You ain't got to look at them. You ain't got to interact with them. It's cool. Now, years and years later, maybe you're at a situation, a social event where you've been invited, you know, and you've all got the same sort of friends. And guess what? You see that person there that years ago did the most terrible thing to you. And what's so common to happen in that scenario? Your mind goes so rapidly into, they're this thing that did this thing to me, that is this negative character in my life, that la la la. And all it is an attachment to the image. It doesn't matter if during that 5 years or something separation, they've realized that they're a horrible person, that they do horrible things, they speak to people in horrible ways. So they've given up all their possessions, they've gone to help the homeless, they've, you know, given all their money away, they've completely reconstructed their persona, and then they see you a few years later and they go, I need to apologize to them. And you're going, you're the one, you're the problem. Images.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I've had a similar situation, or at least in some regard, you know, and I think I've had it happen to me as well, where it's like people have seen me as the old version of me. So in an interaction, they're judging me or they're seeing me in this sort of box instead of realizing, wow, this guy's changed. Wow, this guy's personality is different. He does different things now, you know?
Yeah.
Which is so interesting.
Yeah, it is. And we're all, you know, I say all this, but I'm a very judgmental person in this regard. I would say to be judgmental is an important trait of human evolution, really, in that, you know, we need to be able to judge our environments around us. We need to be able to you know, process information, take risks into account, you know, risk assessment and all this. So that's where the judging mind comes from. But again, it's one more aspect of yourself you can observe and step away from. I love that the amount of people in my life that I'm close to, that when I first met, my judgmental mind thinks I'm not going to get on with them. You know, this guy, look at this guy walking up now with this attitude, and they become like my best mate for 15 years.
Yeah. It's brilliant. So true, eh? Yeah. Often it's about us more than them. Some way we're seeing it, some way we feeling like it's a rejection of us, or it's a you know, bad aspect.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You mentioned before, just coming back to this, you could have you could book or have little sessions with some of the teachers during your retreat. Yeah. How would that work if you couldn't speak?
So and one of the interesting, isn't it? Yeah, how does that work if you can't speak? Yeah. Well, obviously you can speak to them. So
you can.
So in this conception of not speaking for 10 days is you speak with a teacher, and even that I mean, you have to, and I was a bit gutted about that in a way. But I'm sure in real reality, there's a kind of a health and safety aspect to that, you know. But you know, sort of every 2 days, you will be called. You know, where you sit in the meditation, or you'll sit in a line of people, and your line will be called up, and you go and sit. The teachers will be at the front, and they're facing you. There's a female and a male teacher, and they're facing you, and you'll sit, you know, at the back facing them. So you get called up and you'll go and sit down on the floor on some cushions in front of them, and they'll explain again the particular technique you're working on at the time, whether it's focusing on your breath or focusing on your sensations or whatever it is. And they'll check in with you, you know, they'll say, you know, and Joey, are you doing, you know, are you feeling, and you're like, yeah. And then, you know, you able to do this and that, and you're like, yeah, or you're like, nah, I feel this, that, and the other, and they'll go, okay, we'll try this, that, and the other, and then they go, let's all meditate together, and then you sit there, and everyone just sits and goes back into it in front of each other, which I found a bit bizarre. It's like, it's such a solitary thing that you can't really even. If we've all got our eyes closed sitting there, how can we gauge what's going on here? You know, surely we can't.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you didn't really get like any private time with the teachers. It's more like you get a minute or two check in a day or every few days, more like that rather than like a 10-minute conversation where you are.
Both,
Right.
both. So you have that's the required one. That's why I say I was a bit gutted that I had to. The first time I was called up to sit there and actually had to answer a question to him. Do you feel the sensations under your nose? I was a bit like, hang on, I don't want to speak. I joined this thing to do the thing. Like, I don't want to speak. But yeah, so that's the requirement. Every 2 days or so, you'll get asked like to go and have a chat like that. But there's optional talks every day. There's a sign up sheet where during the lunch period you can go and have a one-on-one with the teacher for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and at the end of each day as well. If you're still able to by then, because you're so exhausted at the end of each day, you can hang around till everyone leaves the hall, and you can ask questions then as well. But that's not private. Everyone's sitting there waiting to ask theirs. So yeah, there's those aspects where you speak. And yeah, I mean, and aside from that, all of the other kind of things that they encourage, like they encourage no eye contact. Generally, it's on people to take that on board. Encouraging no exercise, it's on people to take that on board. No one comes to punish you if you do it. It's down to what type of experience you're seeking. And so the point being that you need to approach the system as if you are alone.
Right.
Because
so
it's
the reason you don't look at other people's eyes and have the eye contact is because you're going to start connecting with them and their emotions as soon as you do that, eh?
Exactly. It's a form of communication so strongly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, yeah, and I found that too a bit. See, I'm still speaking with one guy I met on that. So I've done 2 courses since then. That was, I went in with no knowledge and that, and now I've been back. So but one of the
You've done
guys,
20 days of silence.
yeah. So
wow, yeah, real
so,
hardcore. I don't think many people would come back for more, eh?
Oh, you'd be surprised. People do it. People, I met on the second time I met a guy it was his 9th course. So you'd be surprised. And each time there are kind of tiers where once you've done the first, you become what they call an old student. So you're able to go back in a different capacity. You can volunteer, or there are some different approaches, and there are different courses you can go on as well. You can go further into the techniques. But yeah, one of the guys I met on the first course, I kept seeing. He was one of the first people I chatted to when I arrived there to sign up on the first day, and I kept seeing him, and he was in the same accommodation block as me, a few buildings over, and I kept seeing him around the place. And I'm a pretty good judge of sort of human psychology, body language, and all by now, if I say so myself. And I just was watching him, and I felt, because that's a really interesting aspect of this thing, to not talk and not look at each other. Like I was saying, the judging mind, you look at everyone around the place and you start to create stories, because you don't know what their accent is, you don't know where they're from, you don't know what type of person they are. So you start to, just by feeling and by looking at body language and clothing and things like that, you start to create these stories about people. And this guy, I saw him and I kept thinking, he looks like he's struggling. Like, he really looks like he's struggling. And like I said earlier, I'm a bit of a maverick in a way, the way I approached Vipassana, actually. I didn't totally, I wasn't totally following the rules in that manner. And a lot of hardcore Vipassana people don't like me for that. But so with this guy, I kept trying to catch his eye. And say, like, hey mate, are you all right? Are you okay? And all I wanted to do, I didn't want to put him off his course or anything like that. I wasn't trying to meddle in his vibe, but I just wanted to try and communicate with my eyes. Maybe I just smile, but some understanding of, like, hey, it's cool, man. Like, don't go in too hard to that headspace. Like, we're here together. Remember why you're here. You're here. You of your own accord. Don't go too serious. I just wanted to instill something like that, but he never look at me in the eyes. And I remember one day, because after 10 days, you if you ain't got many clothes that I didn't, you do a bit of hand washing there, and there's some washing lines. There was a washing line outside his room. So I'd wash my clothes. I'm hanging them up, and I've gone down, I've gone up like that, and he came out the room, and I saw him, and for a brief second we catch eyes, and I farted. I farted, and we both just cracked up laughing, you know, and it's beautiful. I mean, it don't matter what age you are, a fart is funny, you know. It's a beautiful human experience. And yeah, I'm glad of that. And later on, outside of it, at the end, when you can talk, I relayed this story as I just did to you, and he said, "Yeah, man, you're 100% right. I was struggling hard. I was really thinking of walking out of there and everything." So that's interesting. Whereas on the other end, there were some people that I would see and I would think, like there was this one guy, I was calling Jesus in my mind. He looked like Jesus. I mean, he looked exactly like Jesus Christ of Nazareth, or a kind of movie depiction of, you know, how we've whitened him up, Jesus, in our culture. You know, a white, like beautiful man, big flowing hair, big, like, you know, really well built, well worked out guy, like this Jesus guy. And he looked he was just so like walking around the place, just, you know, in this absolute like solid vibe. And I just kept seeing him, and he made me feel like nervous. And it's funny because there was a joke I saw years ago of like a kind of a meme really, where it's like some people in biblical times and they would say, "Quick, look busy, Jesus is coming." and I felt like that, like, you know, I felt whatever experience I was having, it weren't as profound as Jesus's experience. Like, he's smashing it, you know, and I'm just rubbish, keep thinking about songs, and so it made me nervous like that. And on with this guy at the end, when you can speak, I again reiterated that exact story to him very honestly and earnestly. Said, "Man, you know," I said, "Jesus," and I give him a hug. I said, "Man, you know, you're such an inspiration. You're da-da." And his whole demeanor, it was amazing. He was all like this, and I went, "Jesus," I said, "You're amazing." He was like, "What?" And he was like suddenly like a cartoon character. Like I've never seen, you know, he was like a rubbery. He was like, "What? No, oh no, I'm so bad." He was going, "I'm so bad. Like, I had no idea what I'm doing." And he's from Germany, and he was absolutely like charismatic, like funny, you know, absolute opposite. So it's so interesting. It's such an interesting experience. Yeah.
That is so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, and on that final day when you can speak again, I mean that's almost worth doing for that experience, to like the ecstasy, the ecstatic, like it's crazy, the energy that comes out of it. I remember at the end of my first course, there's a final meditation. On the last day, it's kind of you can speak halfway through the day, and then you have to go and do all the meditating again to complete the day. And then the next day you come out, you meditate in the morning, and then you eat breakfast, and then you come out and you get the bus back to Auckland or whatever. So that last day is not so serious. It kind of is broken in half. And I remember on that final meditation, sitting there and really squeezing it, because I knew that something was going to change. You know, when we all start talking, something's going to change. And I know how much of a talker I am anyway. So I started to do really long sessions in there. Actually, I never would have, each session is an hour, and I never would have thought that I would have even been able to sit and meditate for 20 minutes, let alone an hour. And come the end, I used to, and it's a bit silly, but like I say about breaking the rules, there are some sessions where you do like an hour and then a 10-minute break, then an hour, then lunch, something like that. So I would just meditate, then I would sit through the break as well, and then I would go into the second hour. And there was one time I was there, a good few hours just in a row. And you know, you feel like you're I felt like these mad pains in my legs, you know, sharp pain rising up my legs, you know, and it's so intense, burning. I felt like my leg was going to snap, you know. But you start through the process, you're observing the sensations, and the going through, it keeps saying, you know, it's the mind. The mind manifests so many things. The mind manifests the feeling that you need to scratch, the feeling that you're itchy, the feeling that you need to move the way you're sitting and it's the mind creates all of these sensations all of the time. So I really played into it, like, okay, let's really see then. My leg felt like it was gonna, I'm sitting cross-legged. It felt like it was gonna snap in half. That it was that crazy, and I felt, no, just be with it, just be with it. And I kept playing this game with myself. There's the it's the pain in my leg, all right, but I'll go everywhere else. So I start observing everywhere else, observing here, and I'll go back to my leg. It fucking hurts. Anyway, I kept doing it. No, it hurts. All right. I was playing like a doctor in a hospital, going around checking on the patients. Yes, I know your leg hurts. We'll get to that later. I'm going away now. I'll come back later. And sure enough, really, I felt this intense burning pain just subside into nothing, gone. And I was like, what? And it gone. And even then I broke my sitting by physically touching my leg, feeling it, and of course it was just my leg, and it was gone. And then somewhere else in my body, a new pain starts arising bit by bit by bit, and it's like this over and over. Anyway, so I by the end I was sitting like this, like very long sessions, and very much like going into this practice and really, really trying it, because I knew as well when I go out into the world, I'm not going to have the opportunity to experience it in such a strong way. So on that last day, I was sitting and I was squeezing it for what it was worth, and the bell rings and it's the end of the session, meaning you can go back out of the hall, back down for lunch, and on this, because it's the last day, you can talk. So I hear everyone start leaving, and I think no, and I sit there still further, like, no, I ain't going yet. I'll catch up with them later. I'm going to squeeze this final session for what it's worth. And I hear like 1, 2, 3 conversations start far away. Gets louder and louder. Everyone's in the lunch hall talking. The laughter is unreal, like so loud, so big. Everyone's conversation is so big because everyone's just bursting through, bursting full of stuff, like just blah 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 blah. And then it started to like overwhelm me. I thought, no, I don't even know if I want to finish this meditation because I can't deal with that, going down there into that. And I thought, oh fuck! And I went out and I walked and I steadied myself outside and I walked down, all calm, trying like a bit overwhelmed, thinking, oh, maybe I'll just go to my room. Got to the bottom of the steps and someone sees me. Hey, it's you! It's this guy, Mo! Like this. Oh, I saw you, blah blah blah. And you're in it. And then me, I'm too. I'm like, yeah, blah 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 blah. So yeah. It's so interesting. Yeah, it's such a profound experience, It really is.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Seems like you had quite a few memorable experiences in this 10 days, eh?
Yeah, big time.
That's so interesting.
Big time. Yeah.
even in sort of doing nothing, things are happening. All these stories come out, which is amazing to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
How did you find the experience changed you afterwards, if it did?
Yeah. So honestly, when you meet other Vipassana meditators, it's always the same question. Do you still do it? Do you still keep it up? And so honestly, no. Like lately, especially, I haven't been meditating at all. Not for 10 minutes, not for 2 hours. Yeah. But one thing that I have kept. One thing that stayed with me or changed, as you're asking, is that just the basis of that philosophy, that constant, the reality as it is, not as you want it to be. It's changed the way that I approach situations. And in a sense, my level of sort of conscious awareness of situations. And don't get me wrong, I'm human, so a lot of the time, no, I'm just offline. I'm just in experiences, just rolling from one thing to another, but every now and then I just remind myself through the day of like, reality as it is, here you are, be with it, whatever it is. And the days, it's obviously particularly important when you have trouble, mind trouble, or physical altercations with others, or or anything, like any of the vicissitudes of our life. When you experience them, the mind then doesn't want to be there. The mind wants to be somewhere else. You want to go somewhere else. You want to be, ignore the trouble, whatever, or, And so in those situations, even if it's completely unprovoked, just this, it's hard to be human. And when you come to that type of mindset where you just feel depressed or something for whatever reason, you're overthinking your life, again, that comparative nature, I keep coming back to this principle. And that is the reality as it is, not as you want it to be. As in, be depressed. You're depressed. Be depressed. Don't push it away. Experience it. Don't keep trying to trade up the moment for a depiction of a moment somewhere else, some other place in space, in time, that is better than this one. This is the one. This is the moment. This is it. And we've translated that in so much, especially these days, and I put a lot of it into my work. You see a lot of my work reflects this, statements like be here now, these very, very captive and culturally appropriate, cool ways to, I'm just being present, man. I've been working on being, when people say I'm working on being present, it's like, you can't work on anything else because that's all there is, And so to keep coming back to this for me since completing the course is one of the biggest shifts in my consciousness, So even when I'm in the trouble, even when I'm in the doldrums of my mind, it's there I am sitting in there with my blah, 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 blah. And I start to it starts to equalize again, and I start to come out of it very naturally, because I start to, again, like he said, smilingly see these things, smilingly, like realize the kind of the unreal nature of it, smilingly, not with a heavy heart, but smilingly. It's just a dance,
Definitely. Oh, I love that. And you take some of what you learned and you put into art as well, don't you? I see a lot of conscious type of art that you put out. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you take sort of your philosophy and put it into artwork? Just briefly.
Yeah. So I'm, like I said earlier, my background primarily is in graphic design. Actually, I spent 5 years studying graphic design, and any good graphic designer will tell you that what it's really about, what you're really learning as a skill, is communication. Then you gloss everything up and make it look nice, but if it don't communicate, the advertising or whatever it is you're trying, which your project is, if you're not communicating, then you ain't doing your job properly. So I've gone on a long journey where away from the graphic design industry and more into handmade art. And now it's interesting, at this moment I'm kind of circling back. But anyway, in between the handmade art that I make, I thought, if I'm making something and I want to expose it to people, I want to show my work. I'm not making work just to be coveted in my bedroom or something. It's to go. I want it to be out there. I want people to benefit, and so I want people to benefit from some of the ideas that I benefit from. So how do I communicate it? So I turned my creative process into an exercise in visual communication of these types of philosophies and these principles. And one of my big before all this, before Vipassana, before living in New Zealand, before living in India, one of my big changing points was actually discovering the Bhagavad Gita and reading the Bhagavad Gita, and that affected me profoundly. And the Bhagavad Gita, eh?
Yeah.
So that's what the Krishna consciousness movement associate with. It's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, a warrior. So what Krishna's, he says a lot of things, but one of the things that stuck with me is, don't concentrate on the fruit of your labor, only on the labor itself. And this, in my mind, my labor is my artwork, my visual communication. And, so I just focus, I fixate on that. I use it as like yoga. And further step from that, he says, and if you, if you concentrate on your labor, don't be focused on your labor for the I, for the self, for what you're going to what you're going to gain from it. Rather fixate on what others, or he says, give unto me, give unto Krishna. But that can throw some people. Give it to God, But it depends on your conception of God. See, for me, how that communicates to me is give it out. Just give it out. Don't keep it. Don't hide it. Don't. It's not yours to own. It didn't come from me. Inspiration didn't come from me. It comes through me. So, for me to find gratitude in that experience is to give it out, to continue. Don't get me wrong, I try and sell things. I ain't just giving it out, but put it out there, channel it out there for others to benefit from, and so that's where I'm at now, really intertwining these messages in my work.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Joey, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was such an interesting chat. I heard some great stories, and I look forward to speaking to you in the future.
Yes, brother. Me too. And if you, let's see where we're at in a couple of years' time, brother. Let's do it again.
For sure.
Oh, thank you so much, mate. I appreciate the chat.
No worries.